G'day and welcome to the Knitwits and Yarns YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be taking you through the blocking process. So if you don't know, blocking is the process by which you wet or steam your garment, you pin it in place, and it helps to create the size that you want and even out the stitches. So that's the basics of blocking. What we need our garment. So I've got my Checkmate sweater in pieces here. I like to block before I sew, just because it makes the sewing process easier. So we need our garment, number one. Need a tape measure so that we can measure out the exact size that we are wanting. We need some pins. So I just have, like little sewing pins, I guess, just to pin them in. You can use blocking needles, but I have a set and I just don't think they're as easy for me just to pin them in. You need a trusty spray bottle. So I like to dry block. So I set it out dry and then I spray it after and wet it after. And we also have our blocking mats. So you can just find these at hardware stores and toy shops. They're just like those little kiddie mats that children play on. So yeah, we pin into these and that makes it a lot easier. So I'll take you outside to where I block and I'll explain a little bit more about what I'm gonna do. All right, so I'm outside now. I've got a calculator. That's important to make sure that my measurements are correct. I've got my pattern as well. I like to write down the different dimensions that I block my garment at so that my front is the same as my back and the sleeves are the same as well. I've already got a few of these clipped into place. So this one just clips in like that. And what I'll do is I'll start measuring out how I want to block my garment, and then I'll pin it. So I'll give you a little bit of a close-up of what I do. I have my back set up now and I'm ready to start pinning. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these borders as kind of my guiding lines to keep it straight. I'm going to pin my first piece just in the corner. Then what I need is my width is going to be 60 centimeters or 24 inches. So I'm going to measure, trying to keep it straight, to 60 centimeters or 24 inches and put a pin down there. Then I'm going to stretch my width, the width of my garment, lift up the pin and put it back in. Make sure it's nice and secure. And that's already the first one in. Does it look like it's straight? No, so I'm going to lift it up a touch to make it straight. All right, then we're going to do the height. So the height for my one is 73 centimeters. I think that's around, off my head, I think 29 inches. We're going to go up, following our guiding line. We've got to measure from the bottom of the rib. And we've got about 73 up there. All right, then we get our corner piece and we pin it in there. So you can already see it's kind of taken a bit more shape. Then we have to do the same with the other side. The other side's a little bit harder because we don't have as much of a guide. So we're just going to have to make sure we try and get it as right as possible. 73. You can also draw up some right angles and stuff like that if you want to be more correct. Then get that one and pin it in. Then what we want to do is we want to start pinning straight down here. See, this one's not pinned in how I wanted it to be pinned in. I'll probably have to remeasure that as well now, just to make sure it's all correct. So down here, 73 is a little bit higher, and start pinning. So make sure you're following kind of like a line to make sure it's straight. I think the best thing to do is to start pinning. So unroll it, because this stuff rolls up, chuck a pin in, and then once you get to the end, you'll see if it's kind of sloping or anything, and you can just adjust the pins then. So make sure that's all straight. I'm going to chuck this on a time lapse now, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's all pinned out nice and properly. You can see that it's nice and straight now, nice and straight and even. All the colors look to be pretty even. I might chuck some pins up in here to make sure that the lines are straight, but you can see that it looks nice like this. The weather at the moment is pretty cool, but it is windy, so it could dry nice and quickly by the end of the evening. There's no sun really, so it's not going to get too hot. But what I'll do is I'll get moving on the rest, and then I'll get back to you and show you what it all looks like once it's all done. Everything's been pinned, but I just wanted to leave this little bit here because I wanted to show you the technique. You can see that it rolls, so you need to kind of flatten it out, and I just wanted to give you a close-up of how to do that. But other than that, we're all ready to get spraying with the spray bottle. It's nice and close because I wanted to just show you this. You can see that it curls up. What I do is I get my hand and I kind of like massage it until it's flat. And you can see that we're getting the outside stitches now. So then we pin them in, and you just pin them. It doesn't have to be the right kind of size just yet, because once you pin them on the edge, you can just move it easily. So I would just then shift it up, and keep on moving it until I've got it where I need it. And I'll just show you that again. So what I do is I roll it from underneath and just keep on massaging it until it's flat. Then pin it in, and then change it as you need it. It's pinned exactly how I want it now. What I do is I get my spray bottle, I fill it with some lukewarm water, make sure it's really clean, and just start spraying. You can see that this has now been wet because it changes its color, and you just wet the whole thing as much as you can. Make sure that you try and keep the loose yarns away from there, because you can see that sometimes they do create that little bulge. I haven't sewn in any loose ends yet because I want to do that once it's all blocked out. And we just spray the whole thing. Make sure it's really wet, nice and damp, and that should take most of the day to dry as well. But don't rush this process. This is what's going to make it nice and even. So it's really important that we wet it nice and evenly. It's really damp now. We'll just let that dry naturally, and then I'll probably come back either tomorrow or in the evening. Make sure, it's just drying naturally. Try to keep it out of the sun because I don't know what effect that's going to have on it. I just like to let it do its own process, and we'll come back to it. But yeah, you can see that they're nicely straight, and then we can get sewing and sew the loose ends in and finish off this garment. It ended up taking most of the day to dry, but it was still a touch damp, so I left it overnight to completely dry. Now what I've got to do is take out all the pins, and then I'll show you the finished blocked garment. Now that all the pins have been taken out, you can see that it still lays nice and flat, which is exactly what I'm after. The stitches are nice and even now, and yeah, I can go on to sewing it. So I'll head back to my room and I'll give you a few more tips and tricks about blocking, but this is exactly what I'm after. Now that the blocking's been done and we're back in the knitting studio, aka my bedroom, I just wanted to summarize what's just happened and give you a few tips and tricks of blocking. Firstly, I want to just give some information about why we block. So blocking makes it easier to sew. We have a nice flat piece right here, and it makes it so much easier to sew the stitches together when you have a flat piece. So that's number one. Number two, helps to even out the stitches. So if you got any stitches or your tension changes a little bit, any bobbling stitches, helps to just puff those out. And that brings us to another reason why. It does help to bring life to your knitwear and puff out some of those natural yarns. Blocking doesn't work for every type of yarn. Something like acrylic or superwash doesn't take on the water as well as something like a natural wool. So do have a Google and research about what different yarns, how they react to blocking. It also helps to change the shape of some of your garments. So if you're doing some cabling where the cables kind of pull in, blocking can help to give that space and give that a much nicer look. Some tips: make sure you allow your garment to dry completely before you unpin it. Remember that you can change your pins as you go as well before you add the water. So if the lines aren't straight, make sure you just readjust those. Like I said, not all materials react the same. And another thing is that although blocking can reshape your garment, it's not going to add a huge amount of size or shape to it. So if you're trying to compensate for missed stitches, I'll just go pull back and redo those stitches instead of trying to block it out. Lastly, let's just talk about the materials we need. So we obviously need our garment, we need our blocking mats, we need our water. So I had spray bottle. We need some pins, we need a tape measure and our pattern so that we are blocking to the right dimensions. It's all done, ready to be sewn. I hope you enjoyed that video. It's a nice longer one. I enjoyed making it and taking you through the blocking process. In all, probably takes an hour and a half, 2 hours, minus the drying time. So it might seem like a big deal, but it's not. Remember, there are different types of blocking. So have a Google, find out which one works for you. This one works for me. This is the one that I find to be the best yet for me. And yeah, just enjoy it. Remember to block. Remember to subscribe, comment if you have any comments about how you block, anything different that I might have done. This is the way that I've worked it out for myself. And I know there's hundreds of different versions out there. So yeah, let me know. And hopefully I can bring you some more videos of how I do things. Cheers.